That's me in the corner, and that's me in the spotlight, losing my religion, trying to keep up with you, and I don't know if I can do it. Oh no, I've said too much, I haven't said enough. I thought that I heard you laughing, I thought that I heard you sing. I think I thought I saw you try. Every whisper, every waking hour, I'm choosing my confessions, trying to keep eye on you, like a hurt, lost and blinded fool. Oh no, I've said too much, I set it up. Consider this the hint of the century. Consider this the slip that brought me to my knees. It failed. What if all these fantasies come flailing around?
Good morning, grasshoppers. We're going to bring our second bit of instruction for the day on Tigran Petrosian versus Viktor Korchnoi at Soviet Under-18 Championship in Leningrad, 1946. Both of these players were extremely young at the time, obviously. Hence the opening choices that they choose. And in this particular manner, Petrosian begins with a relatively customary opening move, d4. Now, understandably, the positional method, the solid rock foundation of the Soviet Union, was built upon a level of schematic thinking that was taught to them by Capablanca in 1925 when he visited Moscow, and I believe that he may or may not have shown the local players, whether in a lecture format at the Moscow Central Chess Club or in a group setting through diligent analysis, how to place the pieces for the best possible outcome. Basically, schematic thinking means where will my pieces best be placed, and then aiming to get them there. So d4 does fit that bill, as e4 with the piece placement and highly tactical arrangements doesn't always suit the schematic thinking that you need in strategic positions. Now, as was the custom at that time, players were following the top games and they were very wary. And it is at this point that we run across one of Petrosian's greatest quotes. And that was, if your opponent wishes to play the Dutch, you should let them. For example, in this position, it might be in White's best interest to play the move e4 and revert straight to the French defense, which is championed by Botvinnik for a good period of perhaps at least a decade. However, keeping in mind that the move c4 is not always useful against potential Dutch situations, we might want to put the bishop on the pawn on c3, and I will show my favorite recipe against the Dutch. Petrosian chooses the move knight f3. And by playing knight f3 against Korchnoi, it's very unusual to me, but Korchnoi is always a fighting, counter-attacking player. And this is going to show in his later attempts to capture the world title against Karpov in 1974, 1978, and 1981, and ultimately, lastly, in his candidates match against Garry Kasparov in 1983, before Garry Kasparov would go on to challenge Anatoly Karpov in 1984 in a 48-game match that lasted 6 months and was ultimately stopped when Karpov started losing the match. Go figure. Needless to say, in this particular example, many strong grandmasters, including Roman Chinchashvili in a Roman's lab from years ago, mentions that black's bishop on c8 will have problems developing along this diagonal and wishes to come out on the b7 square. Therefore, rather than allowing that to happen, white plays the move g3. Knight f6, bishop g2, and in this particular manner with e6 already in, this is the optimal setup for white, and I've been on the white side of this many, many times. I, in fact, learned this by observing the games of Spassky, and in this particular position, black continues to control the center with the move d5, white castles, and black places his bishop on d6, and Petrosian's next move, of course, applies a bit of pressure to the stonewall Dutch that is ensuing, c6, and now comes the move of positional nature, which shows that Korchnoi, even in his youth, had been following the games of Botvinnik, as Botvinnik had used in 1939 against Rogozin, the move b3, and 1 year earlier than that, Pirc, the Yugoslavian player Pirc, had demonstrated this move with the idea of playing bishop a3. Now, in the aforementioned Spassky game that I knew, black actually tries to stop bishop a3, and Spassky continued stressing the importance of this move by playing the move a4. And of course, we're going to recapture with the knight as we do in the game. So in this particular position, black chooses simply to castle, and after the move bishop a3, personally, I like the idea of, if you were actually white in this position and colors reversed, if you were black in this position with colors reversed, I want everyone to note this plan works against London systems with bishops on d3, against Coley systems with the bishop on d3, and perhaps even Tory attacks with the bishop on d3, especially if black or white in this particular case has already committed their knight to d2. In this case, however, we are nullifying that bishop by pinning it to the rook, and there are several moves in this position that might be okay for black, including occupying the e4 square immediately, but Petrosian is faced with a very difficult opponent, Viktor Korchnoi, who actually captures on a3, and when we recapture, Petrosian should perhaps continue his development with knight on b to d7 and expedite the movements of his queen side. Good morning, Durian Defense. Long time no see. I noticed the advent of Durian Ramen. Durian Ramen is taking Asia by storm, apparently.
Durian Defense.
Yes, Durian Ramen. We are today using the book Tigran Petrosian Year by Year for this game. Petrosian versus Korchnoi in the Soviet Under-18 Championship Final, played in Leningrad in 1946.
What will they think of next?
I don't know. There were some lovely photographs on Twitter. In any event, we have, as it turns out, black chooses to expedite the placement of his queen on the super aggressive square h5. We already are seeking to improve our worst placed piece. Knight to c2. Queen h5, and now we have to actually consider what is black's intention.
Tigran the positional master.
Tigran the positional master indeed. He is the one who taught me how to play chess beyond Fischer, beyond Lasker, beyond Capablanca, and Alekai. Candidates for white, please. Hopefully the music isn't too loud. Now we do need to expedite this, as I have my grandson's pre-K graduation shortly after this video, and I'm looking forward to it. He is so adorable. Again, we're looking for 3 candidate moves for white, keeping in mind black's ideas. What's black's idea? Where are the weaknesses? And we might want to improve our worst placed pieces. Note that we are missing a dark squared bishop.
Durian defense.
So in this particular position, black's primary objective is to play the move G5. And placing the queen on the dark squares is ideal in this particular position. Placing the queen on the dark squares, basically, we have to be very careful though, because queen to d2 is not as effective as queen to c1, as black expedites the g5 pawn push with the help of the knight on e4, which also loses a tempo, as we're about to see. And now we need a further plan for white in this position. Candidate moves for white. I would suggest that you write down 3 moves for white. Remember, don't worry so much about whether or not they are the best moves. Once you have 3 very good moves, just look for 3 good moves and compare those moves to determine, with a bit of analysis, with a bit of assessment, whether or not one move is a good move, one move is a better move, and one move is perhaps the best move. That is how you'll become a better player, by achieving and striving for better moves game after game. Durian, defense. What do you think?
Durian defense.
Set. Petrosian vs Korchnoi, loving the era of Soviet chess domination, and then Fischer came in like a wrecking ball.
With the approval of Miley Cyrus, of course. Now, this is the square upon which our schematic thinking might wish to place a knight. However, we have more than one knight that can reach that location, as Petrosian seeks to place the knight on that square or reinforce it with the help of 2 knights on the e5 square. The knight on c to e1, followed by g5, knight to d3, and already black feels the need to fight for the square himself with knight to d7, knight on f to e5, king to h8. Let's see what they say for a moment. Korchnoi makes another overly optimistic move. Perhaps he was looking for play on the g file. Again, we're using the excellent book by Tibor Karoli and Tigran. I apologize if I messed up that name, but in any event, the move king h8 perhaps is not as good as seeking immediate counterplay out with a5, or even capturing the knight on e5 and continuing to develop our pieces accordingly. However, Korchnoi goes for king h8, and now suggestions for white, candidate moves for white again. That was a great Kiss cover by the Lexington Lab Band. By the way, if you do not follow the Lexington Lab Band on YouTube, they make excellent cover music for streamers. They do excellent cover music for streamers, and I highly recommend them, and I highly recommend you subscribe and promote them. Again, what are the best or worst placed pieces? And perhaps, where are the weaknesses, and what is the opponent's big idea is secondary. Now that we've noted one of the best or worst placed pieces, this knight on e4 is certainly the best move. So Korchnoi and his knight have to be evicted. Nico, good morning. I missed you today. Yeah, you went for a caveman-esque bishop f3, but in reality we can actually expand in the center here, pushing the knight out of the center. We're going to go again, by the way. This game is filled with strategic concepts and moments. I just want everyone to notice that on the previous move, Black was unable to play the move queen takes e2. After all, we get to see a very clever queen trap after the move f3, and should the knight actually consider moving away, the queen is swallowed whole, for a rook at least, by ultimate trappage, as the queen and knights and everything are coordinating together. So, getting back to our game after king h8 instead of grabbing that poison pawn. f3, king h8. And in this particular position, we're going to continue our candidate move contributions. There are several good moves for white, all of which are very, very reasonable. After all, there are a couple of Zwischenzuggs to be had in this position. I don't think you need to consult Kotov at all. Nico, g4, c5, maybe. Those are very caveman-esque. We're going to have to think a little deeper than that. There are a few things that we're striving for in every Dutch position, and there are square weaknesses in this position. Perhaps the best move that could have been played was queen a3, invading on the dark square. And no, we don't win a rook through the knight. Should the knight move away, the move knight takes d7, and after bishop takes d7, the rook will be protected by the rook on a8. However, after the knight moves away, we will be able to invade and create further issues and problems for our opponent with queen to e7. Instead of that, however, white chose a rather dynamic and thematic continuation, which is easily the best human move in the position, e4. Now you might wonder how this move possibly works, but as it turns out, after the move f takes e4, we throw in the in-between move, knight takes d7. The in-between move, knight takes d7, forces a recapture as we're attacking a rook. And after knight to e5, a further in-between move, we're attacking the bishop. And already you can see that if the bishop goes to e8, d8, we will once again have our issue of attacking the dark squared weaknesses through with queen to a3. Or, if he chooses a move such as knight to f7,
special attention to retreating moves.
I'm sorry, bishop's hanging. If he chooses a move such as rook to d8, then we are going to be able to either strip him open with f takes e4, and after rook takes f1, queen takes f1, we have threats of queen to f6, And of course, after knight takes d7, we'll be even threatening queen to f8 mate. In this particular position, however, we also, after the move rook on a to d8, we have the possibility of queen a3 as well. And it's a very awkward position for black here. So, Petrosian chose to decline the e4 pawn sacrifice, which wasn't really that much of a sacrifice given all the advantages that white was able to take advantage of. Instead, he chooses to move knight to f7. And Petrosian chooses a rather unique continuation here. In fact, he clarifies the position in the center, perhaps not with the best move. Knight takes f7, followed by another knight to e5 at a later moment. But first, c takes d5. And after knight on d takes e5, d takes e5, we now have a strategic advantage in space with the help of the e5 pawn. C takes d5, e takes d5, e takes d5, and now f4 secures our protected passed pawn and an absolute strategic advantage. So every endgame will favor us at this point. Black chooses to guard the pawn on d5, and his situation is rather precarious in this position as we look for candidate moves for white. Candidate moves for white. Again, looking for several moves. Got to notice the Canadian wildfire smoke is returning to New York. Glorious. I feel for the Canadian people, as far as if the smoke is this bad here in New York City, can't even imagine what they are going through. My heart is with them. And all of my favorite Canadian streamers, La Fanois, Velcrodot, AK and Emsco. I hope you're all well. I'm feeling it less. So in this particular position, we're going to choose a very serious penetrating move, queen to c7. And with this penetration, we see a very precarious link between the knight and the rook, the queen and the knight. And while black might choose to finish his development, he may need to give up on this pawn. However, he chooses this moment to complete his development. Thank you, Chescudo. So after the move b6, white exchanges on g5 as everything is overworked. There's no way to recapture because of the loss of material on d8 or f7. So f takes g5, bishop a6, and now, yes indeed, Canadian wildfires. They have 200 fires burning across the country, just north of us. Candidate moves for white in this position to bring this game home, folks. Now we can already tell that black has found a very active counter-attacking move, bothering our rook on f1.
What is the timer for?
45 seconds to choose several candidate moves, yes.
Candidate
And of course, if you're watching on demand,
said. The time we have to find candidate moves Durian defense,
Nicodemonius.
said.
and I agree with both of Nicodemonius's moves. Rook takes f5, threatening the knight on f7. e6 could also be considered as a possibility with the knight moves. Then we have this one.
RxF looks yummy.
Well, unfortunately, black's position collapses in its entirety after knight f4.
Are you done with us?
Yes. After knight f4, black's position collapses in its entirety. And black chose this moment to resign, as after the moves queen takes g5, queen takes f7, or even more simply, rook to e1, preparing the push of the pawn, life is very difficult for black. For example, you're not really getting rid of the rook on f1, you're only getting rid of the rook on a1. Bishop takes f1, rook takes, and black is in the driver's seat as far as commanding this position with not just the e6, the weakness on the dark squares, but also on the light squares, not just tagging the rook, but also threatening in this direction as well. I hope you've enjoyed this brief instructional stream. Trying to keep them to 25 minutes or so. And if you have, please make sure that you subscribe. Yes, baking a pie indeed. Subscribe to the YouTube. Follow me on my socials. I am at the same name on almost every social interaction. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you again next stream. Thank you, Nico, Chess Kudo, Durian Defense. It was great to see you guys. Let's see where we should go from
Durian
here.
defense.
Said. Smash that subscribe button.
Smash that subscribe button, please.
Durian defense.
Said. From here to eternity.
In any event, thank you all for being here. I hope to see all of you again soon. Please follow me on my socials, join the Discord, subscribe to YouTube. Thank you very much. Cheers and ciao.